Hey guys, how's it going? It is I, the real Randy Chavez, coming at you today with a Veve Omi update video. Guys, if you're new, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. I love y'all. Everyone say hello to Dashi. Hello, Dashi. Commenting, liking, subscribing is a free way to help support the channel. Non-free ways are Patreon and smashing that thanks button down below. I've been asked a bunch about this Disney potential acquisition. I've made videos about this in the past. It's kind of like when the guys over from Death Battle, every time Goku gets a new form, Goku versus Superman, Goku versus Superman. It's like, is Disney buying Veve? First, short term, I'll just answer this without any clickbait long explanations. Short answer is no. You do see Dan and David having a conversation at DCon. They had mentioned, now granted they could have been lying, I don't think they are. They did go and they say in that, I think, 20-minute interview that they are not for sale. That it would take years for them to be able to sell. Now, that's granted at their current market cap, which is probably a couple billion for Veve. If somebody offered them 20 billion, which would be grossly overpaying right now, would they do it? I mean, at that point, everybody has their price. You're going to do it at some point. But again, that's kind of insane fairy world. But there is talk, and there was an article, I'll go over the article about what exactly Disney hiring a transaction lawyer for aggressive NFT and DeFi plans, what that means. And they did have a scholarship over like the last 6 months. The last couple months they had, I think, 6 companies win a scholarship where they gift them like, not a ton. They gift them like, I think $250,000 or something. I think Solana got one. I think a couple of other ones got one. But I think Solana was the one that I actually knew. And I was like, okay. And what they do with that is they give them a certain amount of funds, and that company takes those funds, and whatever they create, if it's successful, Disney would own a certain part of that. It's like kind of going to the garnet mines in upstate New York. You pay a certain amount of money to go and dig up these garnet gems and mines, and you get to keep what you get. And most times you maybe, if you're lucky, kind of break even. But every now and then you hit a nice score and you go and you get something really big. It's kind of like gambling. So that's essentially what Disney did. They just want to show their investors, hey, we are in the space as well. We are going and getting into Web3. It's a big buzzword. So that's what they're kind of doing with that. And a lot of people were upset that Veve wasn't a part of that. I was like, why would you want Veve to be a part of that? That just means that, Veve's throwing a tiny amount of money at the wall, and they're just doing that. And they don't really believe in the project. But Disney's very, very hands-on with Veve. They're very, very, and I'll get to that in the article. So let's go over. And I will also be talking about the potential of how it could come to pass that Veve can actually buy or own part of Disney. So yeah, that's going to be wild. It could be the whole kit and caboodle. But anyway, the article goes saying that the Walt Disney Company is looking to hire a transaction lawyer to explore emerging technology opportunities, including NFTs, working at an accelerated and aggressive timeline, according to a job posting on LinkedIn. The job ad added that they would hire a partner with business teams as they plan new global emerging technology projects across additional segments like the Metaverse and decentralized finance, assist in performing due diligence for NFT, blockchain, third-party marketplace, and cloud provider projects, and negotiating and drafting complex agreements on those projects. So you could have hired anyone from the Veve team. You could hire Brock Blockchain. You could hire, Puddin Cheeks. You could probably hire me for part of that. This is, don't let technology pass you by. Get really, really good at understanding all these things. You could probably make a lot of money. So typically transaction lawyers that they are looking for, they review merger and acquisition deals and other complex business dealings. And I think this is where people are saying, would Disney buy Veve? And again, unless they grossly overpay for something, again, let's just say Veve's worth $2 billion. And Disney has, I think, 14 billion cash on hand. They could offer them 10 billion, still have 4 billion left, and that'd be fine. They could do that. But again, even if they did that, I still don't know if Dan and David would do that unless they would have, unless they would keep their jobs doing what they're doing, being unencumbered. But yeah, so that's where I think a lot of the hearsay, a lot of the people saying like, oh, this is why they're doing it, this is to buy Veve. I mean, it's not necessarily buy Veve. There are other companies that are cheaper that Disney could go and buy, and it would be fine. There are other companies that are a little more developed. Like, again, I wish Disney would buy Square Enix so that this way their sole projects would just be to get a Kingdom Hearts game out every couple of years. I would love that. But they're I don't think that's exactly what they're doing. But again, it is mergers and it is complex business dealing. So I do think with this that it is possible for if Veve wants to do a cap raise and Disney wants to say like, hey, yeah, we'll help do the cap raise. Which again, I would wish that Veve would not do it for Disney. I wish that if Veve does do a cap raise, they would do it like a solo, VC, someone that's got, a couple $1 billion, and they go and they say, raising 500 million, wouldn't really hurt somebody with $5 million. You're getting like 10%, or even a decabillionaire, you get 2.5%, whatever it is. I would much rather Veve do that, because this way that one person that would own, a small percent of the company, which again, even if we're valued at 2.5 billion, 500 million, that goes, and that's 20% of the company. It's enough to have, I guess, a little bit of influence, but you don't, at that point, again, it's a private company, there's no like voting shares. They would still control the majority of it. I would very much like that to happen. So if Disney does that and they buy 20% of the company, okay, then that's a little bit more. They could go, and anytime they do a cap raise, Disney can go in, or they could wait for somebody else to buy in, let's say 5%, and then Disney says, oh, you paid $1 billion for this, we'll give you 1.5. And then they get it right away, so now all of a sudden they get 30%. So that does kind of worry me at that large of an amount. But again, that's not exactly what we're doing here. I just did that as a thing. They might not need 500 million. They might do, half of that, in which case they'd only get 10%. And that's if the company's only valued at like 2.5 billion. Anyway, moving on. So moving back on to the article, the post was published on LinkedIn Saturday morning on September 10th. Disney CEO Bob Chapek said at D23 Expo Fan Convention that the company is exploring and developing plans for the metaverse. Deadline reported, in June, the Mickey Mouse conglomerate hired a longtime Apple executive as vice president of a next-generation storytelling creative experiences, and the following month moved a consumer experience executive to a position as a executive vice president in its next-generation storytelling and consumer experiences. We call it next-gen storytelling, Chapek told Deadline backstage at an expo in Anaheim on September 10th. We tend not to use the M word too often because it has a lot of hair on it, which makes sense. Disney did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Last year, it dropped the Walt and Mickey Partners statue NFT on the Veve app. Huzzah for that! So, and there's been a lot of other companies posting about this. There has been CoinGecko. There's been Altcoin Daily. There are a ton of people that are focusing on us and Disney. So it is nice to be synonymous with Disney. It is nice to be really associated with it. Again, once you see, I guarantee this happens at some point. Disney is not dumb. I know they have a lot of executives and a lot of red tape, so this could take a while. But I guarantee you, at some point, you see Disney have holdings, maybe not OMI by itself, but they might have an ETF fund that is holding a bunch of cryptos. Like there's going to be a bunch of ETFs, there's going to be a bunch of hedge funds that go, and they're going to say, hey, we have this for crypto. I think Grayscale has it for Bitcoin. If you want to go and buy Grayscale, you do that. MicroStrategy, same thing. You don't buy MicroStrategy for the actual company. You buy MicroStrategy because it has like 100,000 Bitcoin. It's got billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. That's what you do that for. I guarantee you, at some point, you will see Disney having ownership or having shares in a company that either has crypto, which has OMI, or maybe if Disney ever, or if Veve ever decides to go public and they sell a little bit of shares, you have something like that. Moving on, the new lawyer will work in Walt Disney Company's legal department within its corporate transaction unit and have at least 5 years of experience managing and running complex corporate transactions, preferably at a large multinational law firm with an internationally recognized corporate practice. So that is kind of what we have for that. Now, I heard people are going to be like, wait, Chavez, I heard you say something about Veve owning Disney. What's that about? So in the corporate world, you have things called reverse mergers. You have things like, let's say, I'll just use Pokemon because everybody knows Pokemon. You have the Pokemon company, which Nintendo owns, 33% of, right? Or maybe we should just say the Pokemon company in general they just bought a bunch of printers. They bought companies that, they bought a bunch of printers that can print their cards. Let's pretend that Pokemon has no video game and it just had cards, right? And that's how that was their bread and butter. Okay, well, if the people that have the businesses that have these cards or that have the printers for the cards, they stop printing the cards, You cut off their cash flow. Now, how exactly does that relate to Disney? Okay, well, Disney has pretty much every corporation under the sun. It owns a piece of it. It owns part of it, or it owns it outright, whether it's ABC, whether it's ESPN, National Geographic. It's got a whole bunch. But Disney, even though it has about $14 billion in cash, it has almost $50 billion worth of debt. Now, granted, the market cap itself is $180 billion, which is a lot. They could raise money anytime they wanted to, if they needed. But this does come on the fact that the Disney, for the most part, up until 2018, 2019, they never had more than $18 or $19 billion worth of debt. And now they're operating with a lot of it. And again, not a ton of cash. $14 billion that can be gone just like that. So when you have something like that, and they're kind of going on with a war with the government right now, mostly it's just in Florida and it's just Republicans. But this is, and I don't want to say one way or the other, which Democrat or Republicans are better than the other. I'm completely neutral in this particular video right now. But if we have someone like, let's say, the person that they're warring with, like DeSantis, if he decides to take this personally and gets elected president, then you could have a really big issue for Disney. And yeah, Disney's got a bunch of money and they could lobby and they could do whatever. But if they take a major hit and they go and let's play this out. Let's play these dominoes out. And you go and you say that Disney decides to buy a little bit of Veve, or they have shares in it somehow in some weird way. Let's say they have, 5%, super minority share. It doesn't do amazing things for Disney if they're partnered with Veve. Why they're partnered with Veve in these giant leap forward into Web3 is because it's a new medium. They show new line items for revenue, and a lot of them. It is a fraction of the amount of money that they get every month, every year. It's not that much yet. Why they're doing it is partly because bragging rights. Disney doesn't know a lot about NFTs. Disney doesn't know a lot about making video games. They don't know a lot about Web3. This is their learning partner. This is their learning curve. Like Veve, obviously the team has much experience in this. They are pioneers in this. Very, very successful in this. Disney's learning as much as they can. It is beneficial to Veve for learning, it's beneficial for Disney for learning, and it's beneficial for Disney for a couple of little line items. Not that much right now. It is a lot better. Like, who wins in this relationship? Let's say they both start down here. Disney gets a little bit because they learn. Veve gets a giant boost. It is much better for Veve that Disney owns part of Veve, or Disney owns some OMI, as opposed than it is for Disney to actually own that. Again, it's going to be great. It's going to be a great investment whenever they decide to do it. I would honestly just be hoping that they would just buy some OMI, and that'd be it. But let's say that right now Veve is worth a couple billion. It's not always going to be the case. Veve is going to be worth tens of billions and probably even 100 billion by the end of the decade, not including the OMI, which is going to be worth a fudge ton. So when you have that, let's say at the end of this, David and Dan own they own about 30 billion OMI each, right? And let's say we get to $1, which I think happens well before the end of the decade. If we go and we get OMI at $1, just between the two of them, just their OMI holdings alone, they have $60 billion. Now, again, Disney's market cap is about 180 billion right now. How does this reverse merger happen? How do we go and get Dan and David Veve owning Disney? Okay, well, when you have only about $11 million in volume a day, that's about 11 million shares a day, which is about, $1 billion worth. If you have $1 billion worth of volume a day, you could buy about 5% of that each day and not really affect the price, not including people that hold a giant amount of shares that they could just buy. So how long would it take them to spend that 60 billion? Not including if they raise capital on their own company and do stuff that way, just from OMI sales. If they do 5% of that, let's say 500 million, which would be 50%, so I apologize, $50 million a day of buying Disney shares, not really affecting the price. And again, this is if Disney stays down here, which they'll probably be much bigger towards the end of the year, or I'm sorry, towards the end of the decade, when we are about $1 per OMI, which it could happen sooner, but let's say towards the end of the decade, it would take them a little bit less than, it'd be 120 trading days, or I'm sorry, 1,200 trading days, in order to spend that 60 billion, and in which case we would own about 1/3 of Disney. That gets them a bunch of board seats. That gets them a bunch of voting shares. And if Disney is crippled because of what the government might want to do to them at some point, because again, DeSantis just has this big giant tiff, this big giant argument, this like kind of slugfest going on with Disney, then we have a 0.001% chance of Disney being over-leveraged with debt. They'll probably take on a lot more by that time, and let's say their revenues aren't as high, and Disney's going to the moon, or Veve's going to the moon. It is possible that we have some sort of reverse merger or hostile takeover. Do I ever see this actually happening? Would Dan and David ever even want to do this? No, but it is fun to speculate. It is fun to see that type of stuff happen. In the real world, it's just savage. It's just nature is metal. Anyway, guys, that's it for me. Please comment, like, and subscribe. Comments are good for the YouTube algorithm. Everyone say bye-bye to Dashi. Bye-bye, Dashi. God, that reverse merger would be wild, wouldn't it? All right, I love you guys. Bye. Meow, 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 meow. Veve. Meow, 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 meow.